This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
This is Capital Connection. Mondays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are Jason McGuire with New York Families and Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Well, guys, it has been a while, but I want to say Happy New Year to you both. This is our first show of 2026. Jason, I want to begin with the governor's State of the State speech back on Tuesday. You know, anybody who thinks this wasn't a political speech, all they had to do was listen for about 5 minutes. That's all the time it took her to mention Donald Trump. Seems like he is very much on her radar screen this election year. Is that an effective strategy for her?
You know, in New York, the popularity of Donald Trump is not very high, and so many Democrats, including Governor Kathy Hochul, are planning on running against Donald Trump and what is happening at the federal level, and that may prove some benefit for her. It demonstrates how in an election year, though, people do tend to run towards the things that are popular. We saw a lot of that in the governor's State of the State address, which is kind of ironic because that's how President Donald Trump was elected in the first place, with unpopulist messaging. Yeah,
you could tell this suburban soccer mom. It's cliche, but that was who she was talking to in that speech. We'll jump back into some of those issues in a bit, but Michael, wow, what a week for you. Inside the Supreme Court for oral arguments in those two cases, Idaho and West Virginia, the effort to save girls' sports for girls. Based on what your legal team heard in court this week, are you confident that the justices will uphold these trans bans in West Virginia and Idaho?
Yeah, two of our attorneys were in the courtroom for that hearing. We did file a friend of the court brief in that case. The briefing that I received from them afterwards, as they listened to the sort of legal language that went by, as well as some of the craziness that went by, indicates that they think we'll get a majority and that the girls' sports will be protected both in those states, and that it will allow states to have these prohibitions against males who identify as females playing on those girls' sports teams. So that's a real plus.
We'll see how the court rules, because a lot of states have similar laws that would be affected by this. Jason, let's go back to New York. The governor was kind of interesting in the room there on Tuesday, in the egg, as they call it, a man who wasn't there, Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado. I don't remember, maybe it's never happened, where a lieutenant governor was running against a governor in a primary in New York. It might be a first. Correct me if I'm wrong there. How much does he complicate the governor's reelection efforts this year?
Well, you know, looking at what's going to happen this year, it means the governor is going to have to go through a primary, and that is something that I don't think she wanted to do. Part of the problems with primaries is it tends to push parties to the extremes of their party. And so if you're the Democrat, you're now moving further and further to the left to try to win the primary, which can complicate things in the general election. So in this case, you have the governor who's walking a tightrope. She has Mayor Mamdani down in New York City. She has her own lieutenant governor who's pushing her to the left, and yet she's trying to run towards the middle in a more centrist messaging so she can win the independent voter. It could complicate things significantly for her later this year.
Michael, the Sanctity of Human Life Sunday is fast approaching. It's actually this weekend, this Sunday, Sanctity of Human Life Sunday. We've got the big National March for Life coming up in Washington, which you feature so prominently. I think you've told me before, no state in the country sends more marchers to D.C. than Pennsylvania. And there's more good news. There were about 2,400 fewer abortions in Pennsylvania in 2024 compared to the year earlier. Is this a trend that you think will continue? And if so, what do you think is driving this decline in the overall abortion rate?
Well, and it's even a question about how definitive the decline is. The Pennsylvania Department of Health collects these numbers. They don't provide any specific insights on why the numbers went down, or in some years why they go up. What most likely is the cause of the drop in numbers here in Pennsylvania may not be an actual drop, but the increase in the number of telehealth chemical abortions through the abortion pill, which oftentimes are not reported to the state at all.
Well, you're writing about it online, and we'll let folks know that website at the end. Jason, the other guy that could throw a monkey wrench into this year's election is Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman. You're going to hear that name a lot this year, the likely GOP opponent. He is pro-choice, and it makes no bones about it in this gubernatorial race. Is that going to matter this year? Will his position on the life issue alienate social conservatives and say, hey, we're going to just sit this one out in 2026?
Yeah, I think it does. There's going to be some challenge for the Nassau County executive to try to secure the base. A large portion of the Republican base is pro-life. And I think it's really going to be a burden of proof on Mr. Blakeman to make the case to why he should be elected if he holds those views.
Yeah. I was looking at some stats. The Heritage Foundation, Michael, came out with a new campaign this year, Make America Strong by Making Families Strong. And here's just a few statistics. Since the 1960s, the marriage rate has been declining every year in this country. A third of young people today will never marry. The average age for a first-time marriage has increased 8 years for women and 7 years for men in just the past 25 years. Why does marriage matter, and how can we make marriage more attractive, not just in Pennsylvania, but in New York and across the country?
Those are really troubling statistics. There's a lot of different factors that play into it. One of them is just a denigration of marriage, the sort of dilution of marriage, and having, all these different institutions called marriage and many different things called family. When we look at creation order, and it's a male and a female, and there's a purpose behind it. That's the best health, education, and welfare institution ever devised for children. And the other part of it is this notion in our society that I think, kind of goes right to the notion of materialism, that until I get all my ducks in a row and I have the job and the finances and the house and all of these things in place before I choose to get married, sometimes that train sort of leaves the station when you're left holding the bag, as it were. And it may be a struggle, maybe a challenge, but the things you learn through it make it much better for you.
Yeah, that's why we do this show, is to strengthen marriages. You mentioned it is hard work, but it is worth it. Jason, I would be remiss not to bring up what we've been witnessing on the streets of Minneapolis. I have a nephew who lives in Minneapolis, said he can't even go outside now. It's so bad. The mayhem there, the lack of law and order, the anarchy on the streets of a major American city. Governor Hochul announced a plan that would allow New Yorkers to sue federal officers, ICE agents, making arrests in New York. What kinds of legal battles is this going to cause between New York and the federal government if this standoff between Trump and Hochul gets worse?
Yeah, going back to some of our earlier conversation where the governor has to appease some folks on the left, that's going to drive a lot of the agenda this year, and immigration is a big part of that and how that is handled. So I expect that the Attorney General, Letitia James, Governor Kathy Hochul, and the Democratic Party will very much find themselves in court this year against the federal government on multiple issues regarding this issue of immigration. It's really going to be a fight, and it should not be. I mean, we should not be at a place to where we have to be at odds over these issues. There is a place for legal immigration in our country, and I think we as Christians, as conservatives, recognize that, want to embrace that. But we also cannot have the lawlessness that we have in the land. Somehow we've got to find a way to back away from the precipice and get back to a country that believes in law and order, and also opening arms to those who want to come and be a part of the American dream.
Yeah. Good people, Michael, can agree to disagree on how that was handled with that mother, Renee Good, and how that whole situation came about. We can agree to disagree on that. But as Jason mentioned, the law and order component of this, if we continually dehumanize these federal officers of the law who are just doing their jobs, how do you, as a person of faith, because I struggle with this so mightily, watching that video over and over again, how does a Christian reconcile immigration enforcement with Christ's message of compassion and mercy and all of it?
I think about a passage in the book of Acts, chapter 17, which it says, God has established the nations and set their boundaries in time. The existence of national boundaries is something that has existed and that God had a hand in. So it's the role of government to defend its people. The Bible speaks clearly about to punish evildoers and to commend those who do right. And so the role of government is different than what individuals are to do and how they're to embrace those who are in need and all of those sorts of things. And to be able to see those differences and to understand those differences, to express compassion and to care for one another is something that we as Christians are called to do, but to also understand that there is a rightful role for government to undertake and that we should not be obstacles of that, but actually be participating in obeying the civil authorities.
Be a part of the solution, not the problem.
Yes.
Is a good word to live by. Hey, guys, we've been a lot of places. If you want to learn more about Governor Hochul's State of the State speech, a lot in it. Jason, you're writing about it. Where can folks find you online?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
And the March for Life is fast approaching in Washington. I know, Michael, you'll be sending busloads of people there this year for that event. If folks want to learn more, where can they find you online?
PAFamily.org.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.